Access granted. Welcome to the Bunker Codes podcast. Nothing here is medical, dental, vision, legal, or financial advice. We're all on the same team, wishing for peaceful resolution where everyone can get along and be left alone. Enjoy your stay. Bye.
Welcome back, everyone, to another fantastic episode of I'm Gonna Talk and You're Gonna Listen. This is a late night one, so that's why I'm not live, because for many of you it'd be like 3 in the morning or something, so then that would just be sad for me. So I took a little bit of a break, but I'm back, and I'm gonna be taking some more breaks for mental health reasons. I need to get my head in like a certain like frame so I can get back to writing and get my anxiety like, I don't know what to call them. Not my like physical anxiety, but like subconscious, like, I don't know what to call it. Latent? Dormant? I don't know. Not like, oh, I'm concerned. Like the anxiety when you're going to school or going to work. This is like just jolting up in the middle of the night with your heart racing over and over and over and over. It just compounds like the sleep deprivation and stuff. I think I've said this before. I've talked to people that went through military and SEER training and all that, and they all said sleep deprivation's the worst. And, you know, I think I've said in the past that, like, our generation is really tough because we went to school and we were abused all day, and then we came home and we were abused all night, and then we worked all weekend. And I believe that we're tough. While the generation before us faced a lot of physical abuse, I don't believe, and then the generation before them obviously had a lot of dire financial situations, and several wars. But like the boomer generation, I'm going to try to keep this episode positive, but I think by and large they got it fairly easy. The ones that didn't have to go to war for any reason. You know, if they weren't in Korea and they weren't in Vietnam, then they went and did their Woodstock bullshit and then just ran the country into the ground for 40 straight years. And then anything we try to do to help, they're ultra critical, even though they're the ones that ran this into the ground to begin with, most of them. So we're tough. Our generation is really tough. But what we're dealing with now is really a new monster, right? And I keep trying to think of like different ways of trying to like articulate the problem, because if I feel like if I can articulate the problem, maybe the solution will present itself. But the reality is that a lot of this is a new problem. Like, you have to be able to evolve and bend and be flexible extremely rapidly, especially if you haven't specialized. And I realize that that's my greatest weakness, is that I've never specialized in anything. I'm really good at what I do, but I learned about half of what I do by learning just barely enough to start, and then just smashing my way through it. And I think it's not going to be much longer to where there isn't going to be very many people left that know what they're doing. From the angle of like specializations, and finding somebody that's like what we call like a unicorn, someone that's really good at like two things, is going to be virtually impossible. The problem with that is that this is different from the last time, where everybody pretty much got paid the same. So they wanted somebody that was really good. I'm talking about office stuff now. Like, I'm sure this is applicable in a lot of other places too, though. Where they used to really want somebody that was a really good database analyst and a really good coder and a business analyst and a quality assurance analyst. But they were basically paying everybody the same. In fact, there was junior coders that were making even less than me that couldn't code at all. There's just this insanity to it all. And I think a huge part of it had to do with like H-1Bs. Like, they could just get somebody from India, or they could get 10 people from India for the same price as you. And the law of averages was that one of those 10 was going to be semi-decent, and then they could just let the other 9 trickle away. And then you were done, you were outsourced. And a lot of people talk about like, well, they could just outsource you. Again, you want to work from home, they could just outsource you. It's like, maybe. But what I'm seeing now, it looks like they could just bring the H-1Bs back. And if you don't want to go into the office, and they can't outsource it, they'll just fill the office with H-1Bs. Which, I see a huge problem with that. But not... It is a pragmatic approach. If they have highly educated people on the other side of the planet that are willing to move, people inside the US aren't willing to move, they're going to have to do that. And obviously, if everybody in the US would move, then the United States would balance back out geographically, instead of it being this like meticulously, perfectly even spread out. Again, I'm going to call it colonization. California essentially colonizing the rest of the United States. And then you have our southern friends. And then you're going to have our friends from India. And then there's the great homeless migration again, and the gangs. Like, you have this huge like decentralization going on, but not the wealth gap, like the income earnings now have to like rebalance where they've never had to before, because all the houses in all the US are going to get bought up and all the land's going to go through the roof. And if people don't move back to where their jobs are and they get filled up with H-1Bs, you're going to end up with like this massive, like unemployment's going to get even worse. And retention is so terrible that they're going to lose anybody left that's actually worth anything. And they're laying off HR and recruiters like crazy, which means you're just going to burn out any HR recruiters you have left. And if any, goodness forbid, if any of those recruiters are assholes, you're going to turn them into even bigger, more entitled assholes. HR, the HR reps that are really bad at their jobs are going to struggle even more, and the HR that are good at their jobs are going to get even more burnt out. And it's just going to like erode being able to hire, recruit, and retain talent. And you have managers that refuse to buckle on remote work. And you have people that won't go back in the office for many valid reasons and a couple of invalid reasons. Again, like I've said, a lot of people that won't go back in the office, I think they're being disingenuous. I think they moved away for largely selfish reasons, convenient lifestyle reasons, and either because they can't or they won't, they just won't move back. Move back. So they live in Florida now, or they live on the coast now, or they live, whatever their version of paradise is, and they don't want to move back. And I feel like this is just a repeat of like 2020 all over again, because everybody realized they didn't have to work in 2020, so they could just jag off and do whatever they wanted. And then that transitioned to, well, now I can just live wherever I want and do whatever I want. And this counterculture is just like, has put their foot down, and they're just going to draw down unemployment, and then they're going to draw down food cards, and they're just going to draw down Social Security. And it's not that they're in dire straits through other people's design. They've done this to themselves. And what they don't understand, or they don't appreciate, is that social services are going to buckle, and they're going to have to do something. And we're going to see this in less than 2 weeks, probably, with the fiscal cliff shutdown default hoodle-doo, where they are going to crack down. I don't care if they're R or a D or green, blue, purple. Both sides are going to be cracking down on unemployment, because a good majority of unemployed people are not looking for work at all. Period. They're just not. Or if they are, they're like, oh, well, there's no telework jobs today. Oh my gosh, like, when I lost the house, if I had lost the house in this situation, I would be a billion times better off, because first of all, I would have had the big cheese deferring my house payments this whole time. That would have been freaking great. And then I would have had telework to look forward to. And that was that started 9 years ago. God, I can't believe it's already been that long. Holy shit. 2014, 2015 is when the last crash started, and it was the worst 3 or 4 years of my life. Not that this last 5 years has been much better, but these shitters, and they're not just like Gen millennial, whatever they're called, past millennials now. It's not them, it's everybody. It's like every single generation, bits and pieces, and varying sized chunks of every generation just got like ludicrously entitled in 2020. Again, some of them, maybe the dad wanted to stay home and watch the kids. Maybe the mom did. Maybe they saw how bad things were getting. That's great. More power to you. Like, a lot of them, though, they just wanted to sit on their ass at the beach and just not work. And you don't get to do that unless you've got unless you schmoozed your way in your 20s and 30s and got a sugar daddy and did your exercises, and you can like crank kids out to like some rich person, like some rich guy. Like you can't, or you did really good in .com, or you did really good in the crypto, which again is like 0.01% of the population. So unless you're one of them, like, I'm sorry, you've got to get your ass to work somehow. And Social Security disability is not going to cut it, because when the shutdown happens, and it will, those checks aren't going to be coming, and it's going to be solvent, and the systems can't run forever. And there's some channels that I really respect that say, like, it'll be fine because the money's guaranteed. And that's true. The money is guaranteed. But the systems don't run by themselves. That's the problem. I'm not saying to vote based on fear or whatever. I'm saying you gotta be prepared. And anyone listening to this is probably fine. Like, the people who specifically deliberately aren't preparing and think that they can vote their way out of this have mindset problems that can't be repaired unless the people want to see the world differently. So we've got a real pickle here, and I don't see a way out of this that doesn't involve bringing in tons and tons and tons of H-1Bs and tons and tons and tons and tons of our southern friends, and we're just going to turn into another France where nobody wants to work, and we're going to end up almost exclusively like a migrant country because our culture is not reproducing hardly at all. And I think there's a perfectly reasonable biological explanation for that, which is we can sense that things are bad, and so we don't have kids a lot of times. And so that's also why, if you have somebody that is complementary to your culture and they decide to have kids, that I think you should help them, because that's all that's going to be left of like the last vestiges of our culture in 2 generations. Is, yeah, it's really sad and it's really bleak, but it's true, because there's nothing that can get me to go back in the office. And it's just flat out dangerous. That being said, you might say, oh, you're a giant hypocrite. I live close enough to the office to go back in. And thank goodness I did, because that's probably the only reason I still have a job. Is because I saw the writing on the wall and I didn't go all in. These people that are just like, fake it till you make it, damn the consequences, this'll work out somehow. And I tell you what, based on my LinkedIn, it's not working out for a lot of people. There's a lot of people that are getting laid off every day. My feed every day is just full of people getting laid off. And a couple people getting hired, and a couple people hiring, but it's almost overwhelmingly people getting laid off. And I think that the news is dramatically underplaying how bad the layoffs are. But they won't be able to ignore it soon, because all of those people, if they didn't get severance, are all going to be applying for unemployment at the same time, and the numbers are just going to keep spiking, and there isn't going to be anywhere for any of them to work. We're not innovating or doing anything anymore in our country that can reemploy people, even if they did want to work, which most of them don't. They're going to just keep moving, and they're going to keep reconsolidating, and they're going to keep leeching off the last people who, either intentionally or on purpose, because they had the foresight, or maybe it was an accident, managed to get recession-proof jobs. And I'm starting to realize more and more and more that I don't have any idea what a recession-proof job is anymore. And that I don't think, looking at what were recession-proof jobs last time, is as valid as I thought it was. Because AI is knocking out a lot of jobs. And being an AI developer, for all intents and purposes, seems impossible, because unless you know somebody, I can't find any way of being an AI developer that is not shoving you under essentially what's a giant MLM scheme, where you've got to be a part of their cloud and a part of their ecosystem, and you got to buy in. And I'm not saying AI is invalid, but like, a couple people got in, and AI is the new crypto, and AI is the new .com. Crypto slash blockchain. You know, I just like, I feel like I can stay ahead of it because of all the theory crafting and like think tank stuff that I do, and I talk to a lot of really smart people, and we all bunk our heads together, and I feel like we can stay ahead of it. But what I talked to somebody about this today, and that's essentially what I encouraged them to do too. Like, everybody in their industry right now should be trying to band together with every other smart person they can find in their industry, and they need to all be sharing all their notes and not gatekeeping anything, because I don't think any one person can find this solution, and I have a feeling that the solutions... Ringo's just clawing the hell out of my leg. Knock it off. Knock it off. Damn. I don't think any one person has any one solution to any one industry. And this isn't a reaction video of any certain YouTuber, but I don't think it's like it's I don't make it a secret that I watch a lot of LTT, Prepper Bunker Outdoors, Louis Rossman, and Josh Fluke. But interestingly enough, Josh Fluke is taking a break from videos because he decided to sell his house and get an RV. And he's not the first YouTuber I've seen that's done. In fact, he's probably the third YouTuber that I'm aware of that's done that. My wife watches a candle maker gal who just got an RV and moved to the middle of nowhere. And I know that I think Luke Radowski had done that. I think like Tim Pool had done that like semi recently at some point too. So they all accumulate a bunch of stuff and then they hit their peak, and then they realize they can actually do everything with like a way more minimalistic approach. And I think that's why a lot of them are successful, is because their talent and their power of observation and analysis are vastly more important and add more value than any potential item they can acquire. And I'm not saying that like if you're a videographer that you don't need good equipment, but if you're an analyst, knock it off. Damn. If you're, a videographer, like you still need good equipment. You still need to go back in the office. But like, the point is like, this is all just like 2013, 2014 all over again. I think I said this before, where like all the RVs are selling out, and then everyone's just gonna like realize that being mobile is like way smarter than being stuck somewhere. And like, shame on me if that ended up being the right move. For the longest time, that seemed like a trap. They'll get you to own nothing and like it. And like, being a nomad has a lot of strengths and weaknesses. Like, so let's theorycraft that out really quick. And let's play like the devil's advocate before we get into the main topic. So I didn't get an RV because we had cats, mainly. Cats are like, when they're not scratching the shit out of my legs when I'm trying to think, they keep me going, as I know they do a lot of other people. Dogs, have certain values to certain people, and cats have certain values to certain people. And then you have your weirdos that like birds and stuff. But you can maybe get away with like one cat in an RV, but not if you're mobile a lot. The cat's gonna end up eating a lot, and maintaining its litter is going to be expensive and messy. And the cat, sooner or later, unless it's an ultra well-behaved cat, is probably going to destroy your RV. But there's going to be pros and cons. They're going to deal with mice and stuff, and any bugs that get in there. There's pros and cons. So you got to figure out a good way of managing it. And you have to have an RV that's big enough to where the cat doesn't go insane. Just hang off your drapes like Garfield as you drive around. But how would things have been different if I had been in an RV the last 5 years instead of being in this back room. Well, I still would have had to have the storage units, because I still stand by that maintaining what we kept in storage was a good idea, because it's all things that I would have eventually had to rebuy, like lawn care tools, exercise equipment, which I still stand by were good purchases, because exercise equipment's only gotten cheaper and cheaper and cheaper and harder to get with the Rona shutdown. So I don't think I'd be able to replace that at all. And the first thing we do when we're getting a house is like setting the gym back up. So what would be different with the RV? Well, I would have to have somewhere to park it. And I've noticed around the I know I bring this stuff up a lot, but a lot of these ideas kind of come together. I would have had to put the RV somewhere. Now, with the Google and the Facebook and the Twitter, people were just parking their RVs outside the building. This is in 2013, 14, around then, and then these just RV slums started popping up everywhere, and people started what I call beaching their RV, and it just became this giant mess. So, and I personally got to experience several times what having your subdivision essentially sieged by RVs that your county physically doesn't make enough in taxes to be able to afford to safely tow, not to mention all the chemical biohazards and the broken glass and the needles and RVs burning down and all like the meth. Like, they can just beach a bunch of RVs somewhere, block up a subdivision, like rob it blind, and like you basically have to call like a bigger police department to come help you. And then the cleanup crews are insanely expensive. Like, the whole thing, it just costs. You beach a bunch of like cheap RVs. No joke, it costs millions and millions and millions of dollars to get rid of them, and that's what happened where I used to live. These psychos with about 20 RVs, I've got videos of it somewhere. They beached like 20 RVs outside this subdivision and physically, violently, forcibly entered into the houses over and over, and they just robbed them all blind. And a lot of that was like the inspiration for like the first book. And kind of the subsequent like prequel, well, like the video, the hoodie video game that I made. That was all. Yeah. So I think that the RV thing, not only are the people inside it extremely vulnerable, there's been tons of horrible, violent things that have happened to people inside RVs. You're at a massive tactical disadvantage, so you have to park it somewhere safe. Yeah, man, it's just a mess. RVs are just a giant fucking mess. And then you still have to be somewhere with Wi-Fi and power and sewer. And then you basically have to maintain what's essentially a house and a vehicle together. And quite frankly, they're not that well made. They're just not. The chassis, yes. The rest of it, I'm sorry, it's just not that well made. They just aren't. The insulation's not. I don't care how expensive. Like the insulation's just not that good. They're just not built to last. They're not. What are those? Airstreams? Excuse me. The silver. Those called Airstreams. This is crazy. The internet just freaking died. This is very strange. Yeah, like Airstreams. The big silver bullets. You know, these new ones, they're made out of fiberglass, and you so much as like look at one sideways and the damn thing's falling apart. I'd rather live in like a Sprinter van. Like it's just insane to me, like just this like the junk that passes for an RV these days. So I'd rather, obviously I will never be able to get an Airstream. Even Sprinter vans are just ludicrously expensive. So I'd probably try to get one of those like overbuilt, tanky, kind of like those little mini prepper trailers, and not a teardrop. Although if you have an underpowered SUV, then I think a teardrop, if there's just one or two of you and you take up a very small footprint, a teardrop might be good. But like, the problem is like you still have to figure out how the hell you're gonna get to work, or if even if you're gonna work remote, what would you do? Like when we got the boot, I still had, and we moved into my friend's back room. They didn't trust us to work remote there for quite a while. In fact, they were complaining that I wasn't even in the office, when there wasn't even that much for me to do yet. They wanted me to make sure that my butt was in that chair for that amount of time and that they were getting their money's worth and that good optics and stuff. And I get that. That's fine. But now that the roles have flipped and I'm putting in just ludicrous amounts of hours and there isn't even anyone around to care except for me and my team. So it's just funny how the tables have turned. So if I had a teardrop, like I would where and if what if I had to go in the office? I would have to like find somebody to be like, dude, can you hide my teardrop for me? I've got to go into the office and go, park it in there. It's got to be somebody I like super trust. Park it in their garage. Go into the office, work, and come back and go grab my teardrop. And then where do I go? Like what do you do? And so what I see around here, to kind of circle back around to my point, if you walk around my subdivision, there's like somewhere between at least like 3 and 5 RVs. And those aren't people that own RVs. Those are friends and family and neighbors that are staying with them that needed some place to park their RV because they lost their house and bought an RV because there's nowhere to live. And so I stand by that. I think this was a trap. Even though I think being a nomad has some tactical advantages, the problem is like if you don't support the secure area where you have your RV, you're not helping. Like, the people in the RVs need to be helping patrol the neighborhood. If that makes sense. That way everybody can be helping guard the RVs so they don't get stolen and then beached somewhere. Because that's the same thing with like the teardrop. Like, someone will just steal the damn thing. And it's the same thing with like trailers and stuff. In 2013, 2014, stealing trailers was huge. And then back in like the early 2020s, when the next crash started, like, you go to Home Depot and people are just stealing trailers right out of the parking lot. They would just unhitch. They would just unhitch it from your car and just, or your truck, and just take it in broad daylight. And so I don't know how I would get like internet. I'd have to get like cell internet, I guess, and work in my trailer. But I would still have to have my storage units, like, and I wouldn't have really been able to accumulate very many preps, to be honest. Unless I was just like buying the preps, sticking them in the trailer, and then taking them to the storage. And then, like, I guess the plan would be to, like, if the shit hit the fan, like, get the trailer to the storage unit and like load up. But you still have to have like somewhere to go, right? And if you haven't been putting your roots down, and like I've been talking about in prior podcasts, like trying to build a culture in your area, you're not going to have anywhere to bug out to. You're not going to have anybody you can trust or anywhere to mount any sort of defense against just the multitudes of marauders from all different cultures. And you know who got a lot of flack from saying our southern friends weren't sending their best. And the people get really mad in the US. Oh, they treat journalists so bad. Oh, they treat women so bad. In Mexico, the things they do to women are unspeakable. And journalists, they just it's bad. It's just wholesale open season on journalists there, and they don't even try to hide it. The Western media will hide it, but like if you go into Mexico's media outlets, like you can't unsee the tiny little pieces that they chop the media up into. So not all, they're not all bad, but some of that will be coming here. And you think they treat women bad in here in America? India, it's bad. I don't even want to say it. I don't even know if I can say it without getting in trouble. But like, every worst thing that you can imagine in a horror movie has been done and is a commodity in India. And I'm not saying they're all bad, but like, some of that culture will be coming here. And again, I'm not saying that like things here are great either. There's been unspeakable gang levels of very bad stuff that have happened here too. Like, I'm not saying this is great. I'm just saying like it's just like what happened in Germany was bad. What happened in the Nordic countries was bad when certain ethnicity didn't send their best up there. You know, India tried to only have Christians come in for immigrants and not other religions that weren't as compatible, and there were race riots and a lot of people died. So there's parts of Africa that are just as equally unkind and intolerant, and so it's going to be a challenge to not get baited into race wars, because I think that's like the go-to for the powers that be, is just keep instigating race wars. But like the folks coming through illegally, regardless of like what ethnicity, culture they are, there's a portion of them doing bad things. Very, 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 very bad things. Just like there's people that are being let out of prison and immediately doing horrific, horrific things. And sure, it's statistically very small, but unfortunately, this is how you sow division, and it's this anarcho-tyranny. And it's just unspeakable torture and murder. And when you're in an RV and you don't have anywhere to plant your roots down, like you can run and run, but you're not going to know a good area from a bad area. You're not going to be able to trust anybody. Like, it sounds cliche, but you're going to have to go back to like your family, but can you trust your family? Due to Mr. 45, a lot of families got like ultra polarized, and then with the Rona and the mandates, like it got even more polarized. I can't even trust most of my family to like listen to what I have to say for more than 5 seconds, let alone like be able to formulate some kind of like mindset for what to do if bad things start happening, even though I'm the first person they run and come and scream to for what to do. But then when I put some ideas out there, all of a sudden I'm like the bad guy. It's just like, I just want to be left alone. Like, I don't ask you to call me freaking out about civil unrest. I just want to be left alone. So that's why I have such frustrations with boomer culture, is that, and I'm not talking about old people as much as I am talking about boomer culture of sitting around and doing nothing, wanting everybody to do stuff for you, and then criticizing everything they do. That's boomer culture. You can be a boomer. You can be of the boomer generation and not be who I'm talking about. So, like, if I had an RV and, I had to bug out to my family's house, probably about 95% of my family I wouldn't trust. Simply because the second something popped off, I would immediately get blamed. They want like magic peaceful outcomes to everything. And all you gotta do is just look at it on the news. Like, someone was getting shot and they like wrestled the gun away and defended themselves. And they're the ones that got charged. I think that's happened like a couple. And no, that happened. And then there was a gal who was being, she was being like tried to abduct her or something, and she fought him off and shot him. I think she's getting charged. Like, they're sending a clear signal that defending yourself will not be tolerated. And if everybody would just stand up and say, no, look, like, we're all losing our houses, we're all crammed in houses, and we're crammed in RVs, and we're getting pushed further and further out, but you want us to come further and further in, where we're going to guaranteed be victims. Because you go look in the main cities and just look at the murder rate in like the top 10 cities right now. Do you think people are going to come into those cities to work? No, because they're going to realize it's not worth dying over. They didn't want to work before because they didn't want to do backbreaking work or just mind-numbing work for not a lot of money, but now they're not going to go in because it's not worth dying over. I see these posts on LinkedIn and they're like, oh, your kids aren't going to remember how much work you put in, that you worked overtime. And oh man, I wanted to just light into that person and be like, if you have kids, be freaking thankful. Working overtime is the least of your problems. Like, at least you have kids. They're not going to remember shit because it's the end of the world. And B, like, be happy you even have I hate to say it because it sounds like I'm being a hypocrite, but like, you should be happy that you have a job. Because but if you have to go in the office, the question isn't like, oh, I had to work overtime. You should be asking yourself, like, is this worth dying? And then like my kids not having a parent at all. They're just asking the wrong questions, and they're bringing up the wrong topics because they're not fully immersed in how far we're sliding into the abyss. People are working overtime right now because they know that they need to make as much money as they can right now, and they need to make themselves seem as valuable as they can right now for some like shade of a hope that they don't get laid off. And I did the same thing. And even if I had kids, I would have done the same thing. Because it's like, I need to work some OT now, but just pray that I have a job in 6 months. You know? But these, you know, cool people on LinkedIn, you know, making their cool little quippy, you know, 9 to 5 phrases that they're making, like, that's so like 90s. It's like they're watching too many old like 90s movies and 90s sitcoms of like working late and missing your kid's judo practice, or like, some of the comments were so ridiculous too. People were like, oh, my kid works really hard on his extracurricular activities, and damn it, work isn't worth me missing his karate practice. And it's like, holy shit, that's what you're worried about? Missing your little shitter's karate practice? Like, our country is screwed. If you don't get your shit together, your kid has no future. Little Tina's you're gonna miss little Tina's ballerina practice. You should be worried about making sure she gets there and back safe without somebody abducting her. That's what you should be worried. You should be saying, I need to make sure I'm there so nobody drags her off. Because you know the other families are just gonna stand there and watch it happen, because at least it's not their kid. because bystander syndrome is like just so strong. Or they think just by like yelling at somebody to stop, because that's how criminals work, right? You just tell them to stop and tell them that something's wrong, and they just realize the error of their ways. You should be formulating a plan for keeping your damn family safe and for getting everyone educated on how they're going to need to defend themselves. You know, and then make as much money as you can so you can hopefully keep providing like a level of safety after you've given your wife the tools and the training so she can try to defend the family if you're not around as last resort, as the mama bear. Like the headspace that like people are in right now is just total Stockholm syndrome. Like work-life balance. If you somehow went through like 2020 and 2021 without like rebalancing your work and life, then like you were too busy curled up in a cocoon worried about the unknown virus of unspecified origins, apparently. Because everybody with even remotely teeny tiny bit amount of common sense, regardless of what side of the aisle they were on, they all restructured their life. Some of them just restructured it to go fuck off at the beach. But like a lot of people like pragmatically sat down and like, okay, well, the world's changing and now it's time to change. So, and the other thing, like this happened, this same conversation happened with the train, the train people wanting to go on strike, and I don't get to see my kids karate practice. And it's like, dude, you're on a train. You can't like work from home. You can't like take a day off and just go see your kid do the karate. Like, you're on a train. You're running a freaking train with tens of millions of dollars of logistics like going on. You chose that life. You don't suddenly get like the life of everybody else. What's an astronaut supposed to do? Like, they're up in a space station somewhere. What, are they just gonna have like mental health Monday where they just decide to take a day off for mental health? No, dude, they're in a space station. That being said, I don't know how they get paid, if they get paid by the hour or what, but I'm sure they're fairly well compensated and they don't get to see their families, so they probably get more time off. But like, those are things they have to negotiate, you know? And herein lies the problem. You have to be able to negotiate and fight for what you want and where you want to be. I just don't know what the answer for what that should be right now, or if you should be in an RV or a house. But I do know that houses are going, just very basic houses right now are going for $500,000. And I just don't know of any jobs anymore, even if you're a 2-family income. I just don't know how many jobs anymore are going to bring in like the $4,000 a month you need to pay that mortgage. That's insane. Even for two people's income, that's insane. So I don't claim to have the answers. I just know that like I made the right move by being cautious and staying near the city, but I know that they're going to continue trying to rip people off because they haven't felt enough pain yet to allow telework, but they could just double down and just flood the market with H-1Bs for a fifth of the price, and everyone's going to be really sorry. And in more ways than one. However, I may get to see some of my Indian buddies again, and a lot of them were really hardworking, and they were a blast when they weren't being forced into marriages that they don't want. But that's a different story. So the office is going to smell like curry again, but there will be a lot of food. So it is what it is. They're pretty funny. And some of them work really, really, really hard, and they don't fucking complain. You just got to make sure other people aren't really mean to them. So you got to stick up for your Indian buddies if you work with them. But I also want to say, like, this is what happens. Like, I stayed near the office, and a lot of other people didn't. And that'll unemploy a lot of people, and they'll never be employable again. And this matter of like pay range is really crazy, and that's how I started the conversation. I'm trying to remember to wrap that thread up, which is like in the mid 2000s, the pay range for what somebody did from being an entry level or expert was only a few dollars. Now, the pay range between what I do is like the difference of like $35. So if there was only like a couple of dollars, like $3 variance in what I did 10, 15 years ago, that's up to like a $35 variance now. And there seems to be no rhyme or reason, based on durations or otherwise, why sometimes they pay the low end or the middle end or the high end. And my guess is there's no strategy behind that at all, duration or pay. And I'll also say that they don't care. They haven't given any thought to it. They haven't given any thought to retention either. And a lot of places are still in this mindset where they think that they can just throw a number out there, and that the people that are going to jump at it are going to be people that even come on board at all. They're not just waste more money, or worse, get on board and then just tank the whole thing because they're fake. Or just tank it in some other way that I can't even imagine, because I'm not a piece of shit. But there's a lot of people out there that are. And sure, there's some good people that got laid off that need jobs, but it's gonna dwindle because those people are gonna get gobbled up. The unicorns that I talked about earlier, the ones that not only are specialized, but are specialized in more than one thing, those are the ones that are going to be able to negotiate like the top tier, and which I can't do because I didn't specialize. I'm like a jack of all trades, but I'm a really, really good jack of all trades, but I'm not specialized. People that are specialized run circles around me. I brought that up in prior episodes. But I can muddle my way through and train a lot of people as I go because it comes naturally to me. Whereas people that are specialized, they might be able to just blaze through everything, but then they don't even stop to train anybody, usually because they don't even think about it. I do both, but I'm not specialized, so I can't command top dollar either. The problem is like, these unicorns don't exist hardly at all. Like, they're gobbled up because they are so in demand and they are so rare. The reason why they can get top dollar is because they can do multiple extremely technical jobs really well. And so even though they're very expensive, they're saving the company tons of money. And so they're going to pour money into them to retain them. And I don't think I'm at that level, but I think I'm getting to that level. But I've been working so hard, or I'll be completely strapped for cash, that I've never had time to specialize. But I'm good enough to where I can keep everything going until we can get people that are specialized. Or I can just finish it myself good enough and get it handed off for sustainment. Or I can get it to sustainment myself and then hand it off to where it's completely automated. But unfortunately, like, that doesn't command as high of a price as being extremely specialized. However, the con to that is if you're extremely specialized and you F up and specialize in the wrong thing, like being a project manager, then you're screwed. But if you're like a DBA, or you're really good at cyber, or you're really good at integrations, you can basically print money, probably. But if you're like an Excel jockey or like a PowerPoint jockey, you might really be hurting. You might get some like insanely well-paying gigs, and then nobody wants to even talk to you for, I don't know. And you better have like a house back in South America to go hang out for a while, because otherwise you're going to be broke hanging out here. And it's just like, it's just the business. And the problem is, like, the more successful people are, the more money they make, the more choosy they can be about their projects. Kind of the more exponentially better off they get, because they can afford more training, they can take more time off to take longer training courses, they can just keep getting more certificates and more specialized. And it creates this like slippery slope, this giant wealth gap that we have, and an education gap. And who knows, I could end up being there. I could end up landing something that just gives me like a ridiculous training budget and a ridiculous amount of time to go train. The money is not what's expensive about the training. Yeah, a training class can cost like $3,000, and you go, oh shit, that's expensive. But that $3,000 is like nothing compared to the fact that you have to take several weeks off, where you're like losing more money than the certificate actually costs. So you need both. And if you're a welder, sometimes you can swing it. But if you're some kind of like analyst or an accountant that has to get recertified every year, which is a giant bitch. If you're an accountant, which accountants are in super high demand, you've got to either find a way to get certified every year, or find a place that's going to certify you every year. Or if you're independent, you have to set enough of your own money aside every year to recertify. Or if you're like a certified internal auditor, you're going to be planning on taking a hell of a lot of time off to get certified. Holy shit. So but what would physically keep me in the office is if the culture came back to where it wasn't a toxic shithole. I've talked about this last episode, where people aren't hogging the conference rooms, being weird and in the bathrooms, and like the paper towel dispenser working, like the conference room's actually working. Like, these buildings like weren't maintained during the shutdown. Everything just fell apart. They didn't get them back. They didn't get them ready again for everybody coming back in the office. And the buildings are just themselves are falling apart, and the cities are falling apart. Like, I would come back to the office if the culture returned, and that doesn't mean a ping pong table, and that doesn't mean a snack area. Like, the culture needs to come back. You know, it's the same thing with movie theaters. You can just extrapolate this whole thing to like movie theaters. Like, the culture needs to come back. And that doesn't just mean fixing the seats. And I mean the seating arrangements. That means like the movie's gotta not suck. You know? There's this comment, I think it was, I can't remember if it was like Screen Rant or which one it was, but it basically said like, the new Dungeons and Dragons movie is like what the MCU should have been. And it's funny because like the choreography of like the third act was like ripped right out of several MCU movies, except it was done way better. And it's like, you can have all your fan service and all your wink wink nods and stuff and still have like a really, really, really good movie. And it's like, but I'm not even gonna go try to go see a movie in theaters anymore because of just the culture's not there. And by and large, the movies are fucking terrible. Like, if I knew how good it was and I could go back in time and watch it in a theater that didn't have forced, assigned, overpriced, mandated seating arrangements, I would go back and see the new Dungeons and Dragons in theaters. Maybe more than once. It was pretty good. But like, their batting average is, I don't know, sports metaphors. It's bad. Whatever the metaphor is, it's bad. So, you want me back in the office, the culture's got to come back. I'll stay close enough to where I'll come in if I need to. Because I think every once in a while there's a couple things that are just better to go over in the office. But I'm sure as hell not meeting everybody in a park or whatever. And the happy hour thing just doesn't sit right with me. They're sure as hell not my friends. I do want them all to be successful though. And I think that's a big problem with why the office is so toxic in general, is that most of the people there are not your friends, and they will 100% stomp on you to get ahead. And only through like looking back and realizing in my old jobs that not only were basically none of them my friends, but almost every single one of them was actively working against me or using me as a springboard to further their career, and none of them had any intention at ever watching my back or collaborating. You could talk to somebody all day and work with somebody all day and know them like the back of your hand and know everything about their family and their personality, every single quirk they had. And you could know every single weakness and strength that they had. But you still had like no leverage and no integrity. And they would just stomp me. I mean, they would have no integrity. They would just stomp on you to get ahead without even blinking because they knew you were the sucker. And that's what I realized. My whole life, I have been a sucker. Not that helping people is inherently flawed, but I didn't realize that I was helping essentially moral trash. And when you surround yourself with moral trash, you're just like building up a garbage pile. You're just building a sandcastle out of garbage. And you think that you're going to elevate these people, and you think that you're going to assemble these amazing, smart, high-performing teams, and then they just kick you to the curb to get ahead, and they will stab. They will throw you right out of your own house, and metaphorically throw you out on the street. There, that's what I'm trying to say. Just to get themselves, and that how do they live with themselves? Just fine. Because their whole family, you realize their whole family is rotten, and you realize all their friends are rotten. They're rotten to the core. And then you go, well, how come the other high performers don't have anything to do with me? And it's, well, because you're letting everybody walk all over you. And while they see you, your work ethic as a strength, they see your morality has a weakness in that you're helping people that are morally corrupt because you can't see it. You can't see that you should be above it, but you're stuck down underneath it. And no matter how many times you try to drag yourself out, the people that you continually reach for are people that they put on nice clothes and they put on makeup. They do their hair, or they put on whatever. But they're all just vampires. And all of the legitimately high performing people won't have anything to do with you because you're associating with them and you can't see it. And you don't realize that there's like this class system in your office that you can't see, and that you are associating with gutter trash and you don't realize it. And they won't tell you because they know that telling you is worthless. Just like whenever I try to tell other people it's worthless, so I don't bother. But then you realize that the people that you're trying to warn are also trash. And then you realize that like high performing people will not associate with you as long as you are associating with trash. And it's not until way later in life you realize that these people, while they seemed like high performing go-getters, they were trash. All of them. At every single place you worked. And it is incredibly disturbing and disruptive to realize that you are putting your faith of your job in trash. But it makes sense after a while. And not that you walking all over them makes you better than them, but the sooner you realize they're all trash and realize they're going to walk all over you to springboard, you realize that like staying above them is survival. You're trying to stay above them because they're trash. They're trying to keep you down to step on you because they know that you have virtue and that you're loyal. And so they can use you. You know, just like trash rarely ever try to go after each other. They all gang up on you with all their trash buddies. They find the strongest person that's the most loyal, that actually cares, because they can sense when you care. They can sense when you legitimately care. And then they come after you like piranhas. And they hold you down. They climb up on top of you, and then you sink to the bottom while they jump up to the next rung and wait for your replacement that's going to come in there and try to fix everything, and they're just going to drown that person too in management, because management, by and large, the same trash. Going to keep hiring their trash buddies, keep promoting their trash buddies. And if you come in there and you try to work hard, they will not promote you. And you can't fight them head to head, because they're too smart for that. They're too used to you trying to fight them head to head. They'll just drag you down and beat you with experience. You've got to be above them. And you have to find the other people who will not associate with them. Even if they're all coworkers. Even if they all work in the same department, you look for the people that will not associate with them. And those are the other ones that have figured it out, and they're just waiting for you to wake up and stop talking and dealing with the trash, so you don't get sucked out of the garbage chute with the rest of them. Because they'll lay the good people off, and they'll just keep the trash forever. Because they're all trash. You only end up with a few people ever in any department, or even in any org, that aren't just raging trash. It's insanely rare to have more than a few people that are actually on the up and up, that aren't looking to physically hold your head underwater to keep themselves from drowning. So, that's why the office is a toxic cesspool. So, anyway, I didn't promise that I wasn't going to talk about office stuff again, but it's really heavy on my heart. And I don't feel like the 5 people that watch this, that this is helping any of you at all, because I hope none of you are in this situation. But if you are, or if you know somebody who is, I hope this is like the most concise video I've made so far about it. I know it seems like I keep talking about the same thing again and again, but I think there's a very important nuance to this, which is like, we have to put our heads together, and even if I don't work in the same sector as you, you got to put your heads together with all the same people in your own sector that are the highest performing people as possible. Not the trash, not the people that are going to drown you. The highest performing people as possible, and say, look, let's get together. Do you agree that something's going on? Yeah, I agree that something's going on. Okay, what do we do about this? And maybe it's you make your own business or something. Or maybe you figure out a different mindset or a different product. But I think being innovative and being flexible and being like clear-minded is the only way that we're going to be able to make any income, make a reliable income to survive this. Because otherwise, the top end of this wealth gap is going to be able to gobble everything up when it goes down. And then that'll be it. The next reset will be the last one. And I want us to have enough resources to be able to come out the other side of this on top, not barely surviving, not failing, but I want us to be able to come out on top. And I think this is how we do it. If you weren't already putting in the time and work to figure it out, now's the time. Maybe it's time for your side thing to be your main thing. Or maybe it's time for your passion to become your main thing. Like, now's the time, because it's all starting to come down. And I wish I could think of more, but it's like 1:30 in the morning and my head's getting really swimmy. But I think there was a little bit more of that I wanted to say, but I can't think of what it is now. Maybe it's time for your passion to take center stage of how you're going to make income to survive this thing. And so try to make your own little think tanks and start trying to think of a way through this, but don't include trash. Include people that are actually highly motivated and passionate like you, not deadbeats. I'm an idiot, and I tried for so long thinking that I saw potential in people that were really just using the fact that I cared, and they would just boost me up only to just hold my head underwater and steal everything that I did. And it happened to be over and over and over. I've made people millionaires. I have made people insanely successful. And every time I did it, I kept thinking that we could be brought up together, and every single one of them let me down. And I'm not saying every single one of them is responsible for me, because I helped every single one of them completely selflessly, knowing that this could happen. But not a single one of them brought me up with them. And I feel like I finally learned that, and I finally am with some really good teammates that believe that we should all succeed together. And that's what you need to find. And it has nothing to do with going back in the office, or being in an RV, or what degree you have, or how many things you're specialized in. You just have to find a team that believes in succeeding together. And that is where I fucked up. I believed that that I had found good in people, and that by building a team, that meant that that the team would remember me. But I realized that I was just giving them a free card to just kick me out the airlock once I got the ship going. And I was okay with that, but I shouldn't have been. I should have been establishing some semblance of compensation and stability for myself, where I would have established that we all need to grow together. The value that I bring entitles me to be able to grow with the team, not just teach them enough to kick me out the airlock. And granted, I gave them that out But what I was really doing is just giving them license to rip off my ideas and rip off my formulas and rip off my framework. But on the backside of that, I was growing, and I've been growing all along, and they've all stagnated because all they can do is rip people off. And all of those people are going to be screwed because there isn't going to be anybody from them to steal from anymore. Because all the high-performing people are going to be in insanely high demand. And all of the bottom feeders, I don't know. And I don't care. Because I don't think about them anymore. And unfortunately, a lot of them are back in the office and they're trying to just drag everybody else down with them again. And I don't want to be a part of that culture. Because they're the reason why the office is so toxic. And they're the reason why I won't go back. You want me to go back? They need to fix that problem. Because I'm tired of getting dragged down. And that's exactly what they do. When they can just come to your cube at any point, they just come into your conference room at any point, they're going to drag you down. So I'm going to leave it at that, and I appreciate you all. And check out my coffee page if you appreciate this. Check out my coffee page. Check out my bunker book. I got a new bunker book addendum coming soon. That'll be a whole new book, but it'll be a little mini book. And I'm working on Ghost Company 2, which I'm really excited about. And there will be demo chapters, more demo chapters of that coming out on the coffee page on the $10 tier. So if you like my writing and like my theory and like my analysis and stuff and you appreciate it, then maybe check out what I'm working on. And we got coffee mugs coming very, very soon, and they're going to be cool prepper bunker book coffee mugs. So appreciate y'all, and share this with your friends if anyone's struggling or if anyone's feeling down. I really think this is how we get through this. And obviously, pray for a miracle. So I will talk to you all later. Bye.
You've been listening to the Bunker Codes podcast. I hope you found our time valuable. Please exit safely and conduct yourself responsibly. Until we talk again, have a nice day.